Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another day of the Jayar Report. Not just any day, Wednesday, Jayar Wednesday.
All I'm saying is,
Jackson.
we're all about honesty here on the Damage Report. So I just want to let you guys know, today is not a huge story Wednesday, like most have been for the past, let's say, month and a half. It's been 6 straight weeks, I feel like.
Yeah, I get you're being very humble. But I think that if Jayar Wednesday comes after a big news day, and that's the first chance we get to talk about it, from our point of view, it's the biggest news. And I turn to our fans who sometimes will sit out the news on a big day so that they can hear it from us first. You know what? I appreciate when you guys do that, which nobody does.
That's exactly what I was,
Yeah. So look, we're gonna talk about the election, obviously. We've got some Iran, we've got some student loans, we've got Susan Collins, is she in trouble? Hopefully, and we got more after that. But I'm really excited to start off with this talk about what happened in New Hampshire last night. So why don't we jump right into that? Last night, the New Hampshire primary, which it had one thing going for it that I really like about one of these early primary contests was that it worked and we got the results. That's cool. Hey, we're 50-50, America. But anyway, we did get the results, and Jayar Jackson and I are gonna break it down. Let's just take a look at the rankings. Senator Bernard Sanders in first place, a narrow first place, but a first place nonetheless. Pete Buttigieg got second. Amy Klobe-Trotting in that all-important third place spot, according to MSNBC. But let's pause there for a second. Amy Klobe-Trotting got 19.8% of the vote. That is impressive. We can break down why she got that percentage of the vote, but if you had asked me a week ago, I would not have predicted that she would get that.
It's so weird, but even after the debate, because we wrapped up debate coverage last week, of course for New Hampshire, and we were tweeting. We're always in the same room. We tweet as we're going through it. It ends up being a fun atmosphere. At the end, I started a tweet saying Amy Klobuchar has become, and I had to do something else because we started coverage. And by the time I got back to my computer, I was like, oh, it's too late. That was something that happened near the end of the debate, so I'll let that tweet go. My tweet was gonna be Amy Klobuchar has possibly become the Democratic establishment's new favorite person.
Which I wouldn't have predicted.
Debate, that's what I felt.
We gave her a lot of credit for the debate. I said at the time that was her best debate. It was good. I ranked her third and got a lot of negative pushback, but she did what she needed to do in terms of the debate. I still wouldn't have predicted she would get 20% of the vote.
Yeah, I mean,
but you should have tweeted that. You messed up.
Yeah, I can't say I would have gone as high as thinking she's going to get nearly 20% of the vote, but I did get. There was a sense. There's this energy you feel that's happening with her that transferred over. So I mean, I guess especially since, of course, as you mentioned, MSNBC was expecting her to come in third, but I'm not sure if they even predict those kind of numbers for her. So yeah, it's okay. It's a thing. She's become. I think Jang mentioned last night multiple times because he's now sold.
What?
He's just saying he gets that she's authentic. He understands why people like her.
Is he pro Klobuchar? Is he pro Butchar?
There was some glowing comments from Uyghur last night on this.
Oh no, we're losing him.
Check the tape.
We need to get Nina Turner in here fast to help him. But anyway, look. So great job by Amy Klobuchar. This is what she has been hoping for a year. Well, this and doing better in Iowa, but this sure. Let's briefly mention Joe Biden at 8.4% of the vote. That is several points less than Jeb got in New Hampshire. Different election, obviously, but significant. And I mean, it's not like he wasn't trying to compete there for 6 months. It wasn't like he wasn't putting staff and dollars in. It wasn't like he wasn't visiting it. Like, yes, he's more interested in South Carolina, but it wasn't like his strategy was, I'm not gonna try in Iowa and New Hampshire. He was trying, and he got absolutely destroyed. And look, I'm gonna read this now for 2 reasons. 1, because it's amazing, and 2, because it'll probably be broken in South Carolina or Nevada. But there's a tweet from David Dan who tweeted, Joe Biden has never finished higher than 4th in any primary or caucus in 32 years of running for president. And like last night was just the latest data point in that. I mean, that was still true for literally decades, and still he was the obviously electable guy. Even though the only way you can say that you are electable is to be in a contested election and to win it, or at least do well. But he never was able to do better than 4th.
It's weird, and I guess that's another, again, one of those stats where it goes through over the decades that he's been running. Of course, been off and on. He was vice president, he's senator, all these things. So he has these positions he's held, but it's just as president, you don't know what it is that hasn't caught on with him. I mean, now he's older, so that's part of it. Like, oh, you know, he's spouting off random phrases here and there that people go, what the hell is he talking about? Or just the way he talks to people. And I'm not sure what it was previously versus what it is now, but he continues to not really take hold. And also, what stuck out to me was, they mentioned, of course, we were in New Hampshire last night, and how Elizabeth Warren, of course, from Massachusetts, and is literally right below. And then, but we forget to mention Biden is from Delaware.
It's not super far.
Right.
It's not Hawaii.
Yeah, a lot of folks are collected in this area, of course, in Bernie Sanders, Vermont. So it's all collected in this one small area of these 3 small states. Well, Massachusetts isn't necessarily small, but so how it should have affected him a little bit better, the fact that it's at least somewhat a neighboring state.
Yeah, and he's not some new, like he's not like Yang, which we're gonna talk about, like coming in and nobody knows him and he's got to sort of work to get his message through. Joe Biden has been known for as long as I've been alive, basically, or longer. Now, very briefly, I do want to mention Elizabeth Warren with a 4th place finish. That is not what she was looking for. Obviously, it should go without saying. We're gonna do a little dissection of her campaign on the 2nd hour of the Young Turks later on today, and where, if anywhere, she goes from here. But that's not a good place for her. I would argue. I mean, I don't want to get in MSNBC territory necessarily, and I'm not saying this literally. I'm saying this is something to think about. It's a stimulus to thought. Her 4th place finish, in the context of her campaign and what needs to happen, might be more dangerous for her than Joe Biden's 5th place finish is for him. Not 5th place is better than 4th place. Let's not say that. But anyway, that is.
Well, how much trouble do you see these two? And we just mentioned Joe Biden and we mentioned Elizabeth Warren, 4th and 5th. These are big name candidates. Not like, of course, Angie Yang dropped out last night. Bennet, I think.
Yeah, we're gonna turn to Yang in a bit.
So because of those things, but like people now start to mention when people maybe even higher, bigger names start dropping out. Do you see any reason for that? Because I don't yet.
Why they should drop out?
If they should at this point, or think about, hey, one more state and let's go ahead and wrap this up.
No, I don't think that there's any reason for Joe Biden or Elizabeth Warren necessarily to drop out. It's possible, like Amy Klobe-Trotting could have dropped out after Iowa, and look, she wouldn't have had this. So there are definitely people who should drop out. There are people who haven't, who are not seriously running for president. They're just sticking around because why not? People are giving you money to travel around the country, raising your profile. I guess it's sort of cynical that you're continuing to take these people's money. Anyway, we're gonna talk about that more. But no, I don't think that they should drop out, especially Joe Biden when his strategy is about South Carolina. It's not necessarily a great strategy because his numbers there don't look like they're doing too well in the past week and a half, but no, he shouldn't drop out.
I think the main thing, and last thing on this, at least for me, is this primary season is different than all the others. We keep comparing it to what it was then, and what Bernie did in 2016 versus Hillary. And then what happened in 2008 with these other candidates. And what happened? The pulse of the country, and then the temperature that is going on, and the fear of a potential Donald Trump 2nd term changes everything. Each state is going to vote differently than they ever did before because each state has a different thought process of how this is going to change things up. So people worry and people are confident. Depends on your candidate and who your second one is. Nothing is gonna, I think it's hard to compare it to anything in the past because it's completely different.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something that's not necessarily completely different from what we expected, media coverage. So look, coming out of last night, Bernie Sanders got 1st, Buttigieg 2nd, Amy Klobuchar 3rd. That is amazing. And all 3 of those things deserve coverage in the media. If you're any of those 3 candidates, that is good for you. It is not equally good. I am sort of old school in thinking that 1st place is the best. That's where you want to be. But you can cover all of that. But we know that the media has both in advance of his wins tried to sort of minimize how important it is for Bernie Sanders. The sort of conservative blogger Jennifer Rubin, who hates Bernie Sanders in advance of Iowa, said, who actually cares about Iowa anyway? Even though a year earlier she said it's crucial, it's the most important thing. And so, look, I looked over some of the media after last night, and we got some things that are sort of mixed, like Sanders got what he needed from CNN Politics. Okay, that's fair. And they acknowledged, to their credit, that he won. That's good. They did portray Buttigieg's strong 2nd. Now look, they put a picture of Bernie Sanders. That's good, and he did have a strong 2nd. It was very close. Bernie was 1st, but it was a very close race. So that's fine. But and again, I don't want to stress any individual tweet or screenshot too much, but take a look at this. We'll talk a little bit about it. Reuters tweet: Pete Buttigieg finishes 2nd in New Hampshire primary, Amy Klobuchar 3rd, according to Edison Research. Live updates at. You don't need to know who got 1st. What's the difference? And look, it's not to say that Reuters didn't tweet other things or won't, or that on Reuters' ecosystem they won't acknowledge it. I'm sure they will. But I'm saying that it is only Bernie Sanders, I think, that gets as little credit as they can plausibly give him for how he does.
I think because they're waiting for the over and over predicted a thought that Bernie Sanders is gonna collapse sooner or later. This is gonna happen, it's gonna go down. Oh man, there's no way people actually support this guy. Hey, he's crazy. Hey, do you see his hair? Hey, he's saying socialist things. So they're freaking out over it and they're waiting and said, eventually we have to come back to reality. Chris Matthews said it multiple times last night. He goes, I don't understand what's going on with this Democratic Party. It's crazy, it's weird, it's not normal. He said not normal and he's frustrated. So normalcy is what they're looking for. Normalcy is, why would they follow this guy? So the not even fear, I don't wanna say the fear, but their worry about not coming out and saying what's happening so much is because they're like, okay, these are fantasies. Yeah, 2 states. Okay, sure. Eventually it's gonna fall apart, and we don't wanna be caught saying he's doing great when he's about to not do great. They're still expecting that.
It's so frustrating because like, you take like CNN or MSNBC, and they have a lot of people who are basically just actors who deliver lines or whatever, but they do have lifelong journalists. They do have people who have covered, 5, 10 presidential campaigns. They have tons of money, they have tons of staff, all this research, and they're serious too, Like I joke about Star Wars on the show. We're a bunch of, jackasses a lot of the time. And yet, like, how are you gonna say New Hampshire and Iowa, it's just 2 states, who can say? Like, he also has by far raised the most money from the most donors. Like the key demographics that you have always stressed in other elections, you can see how they're lining up, the coalition that he's building. All of the data that we have, with all of your money and resources and experience and knowledge and training and master's degrees and all of that, like you have to at least pretend that stuff doesn't exist. Like you won't actually say it because that will look ridiculous, but we're a stupid little internet show, but we can look to the data to learn something. And when you say, like Chris Matthews has been saying, I don't understand what's happening, that is not because it's not understandable. It's because you're not interested. They're not saying to people who are trying to make the case for Bernie Sanders, I don't understand. They're saying it to people who hate Bernie Sanders because they don't bring people who understand or work for or have covered Bernie Sanders on. And so is it any wonder that you don't understand when you're not doing anything a human being would do to understand literally anything going on in the world?
Yeah, we bring up political degrees and people's years in the business and knowing what they're talking about. Hey, if you've been out of school, if you've been out of college for 20, 25 years, 30, 40 years for some of these people, and you had something you learned in a way that you approach things back in 1972, and now it's 2020, you're like, man, what's going on? Everything has changed. So your political degrees, your normal thought process have been changed. Everyone knows this. Once you get into the normal workforce, you don't go and look at your old textbooks from college and go, I'm gonna figure out how to do this today in my job. You just go with what happens. And what has happened for the past 30 years is none of this. So that's what we've learned. And even these professionals, they've learned someone who says they're a democratic socialist cannot win. Someone who goes after the rich folks who control politics cannot win. They don't know how, that's how it's always worked. So normal processes for a democratic election are just something we learned in school, and those are just fantasies. The reality is rich people control things and you have to make sure you go to the center. Now that that's not making any sense, everything they learned is no longer a reality to them. So now they're being flipped upside down on their heads.
And look, we're trying to be nice. We're trying to help. We'll see if they listen. Now, very briefly, I just want to briefly touch on this. Andrew Yang, as of yesterday, is out. He had an incredibly unique and for many people an exciting candidacy. And look, we had him on before the national media would have him. We had Andrew Yang on. We had a great talk. I very much enjoyed it. And so while I didn't support Andrew Yang, and I have always been honest about that, I think he's a nice guy, he's got some good ideas. I don't support him. I was never one of the people in media trying to bamboozle Yang supporters into supporting me by saying that he's gonna win and all that. I don't do that. But I liked him and I liked his candidacy. And so I wanna play a bit of his sort of closing remarks as he announced that he was going to be leaving.
I am the math guy, and it is clear tonight from the numbers that we are not going to win this race. I am not someone who wants to accept donations and support in a race that we will not win. And so tonight, I am announcing I am suspending my campaign for president.
We love you, Andrew!
Thank you, I love you too. Thank you, New Hampshire. Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, though, thank you all. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you for everything. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Look, honestly, those last 2 seconds, that's Andrew Yang. It's a guy who managed to make it through this whole process more than a year, and he still is having fun. How? And there are a lot of people who have taken their reputation and experience and they've jammed it in the toilet. But not Andrew Yang. He comes out of this a higher profile. A lot of even people who don't support him do like him.
Yeah.
So he's an outsider and he was totally dismissed by a lot of people. We had him on and everything, but he did actually find a very interesting path.
If you look at his supporters behind him while he's doing his dance at the end, they're even like, oh, this is such a sad day.
Yes.
Look at the energy. They're like,
oh, come on, he's having so much fun.
Why is he so happy?
He's having more fun as he leaves the campaign than the top 3 candidates had from winning in that state. And so, look, it's gonna be interesting to see where he goes from here, where his supporters go from here. He's not endorsing anyone yet, although it's not impossible to imagine who he might endorse. So we'll see.
You predict?
I mean, I think there's some overlap in terms of fan base and some of the ideas for Bernie Sanders, but we'll see. We don't know. We don't want to just sort of assume anything. But I will miss him. Also, and this is the stupidest, shallowest side note, I'm gonna miss Bowen Yang's portrayal of him on SNL because that was always fun in their debate coverage. They both were really enjoying this ride.
Maybe it'll still work out.
Maybe. Okay, we're gonna take a short break, but lots more after this.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be. Featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity, the UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
So that we know in general, the process of getting student loans, let alone paying for student loans, can be a sort of soul-crushing, depressing experience. But for some, it's actually worse, and in ways that they might not even know they're being screwed over. So I want to talk about an experiment that was run by a group that applied for dozens of loans online. These are student loans posing as a 24-year-old man. In all of their applications, they say that he lives in New York, works as a financial analyst, and makes $50,000 a year, and he's trying to get these student loans. Each time the group applied for a loan, it kept a whole range of factors about who that person was constant. The only difference was where he was going to be going to school with that money. So this is according to the Civil Rights Council at the nonprofit Student Borrower Protection Center. So it applied as if this fictional borrower went to NYU in New York, many other schools, and Howard University, one of the country's most famous historically black colleges and universities. And what they found is amazing, and I cannot believe it has not been bigger news. Like NPR did a great write-up, and some other people did cover it, but This should be a major scandal. The group found that if the otherwise identical loan applicant went to NYU instead of Howard, there was a striking difference. For a $30,000 personal loan with a 5-year term, it found an applicant would pay about $3,500 more in interest and fees if they went to Howard. And again, the person is the same, their job is the same, their income is the same, all of that is the same. Literally the only thing that was manipulated in this experiment was where they were going to go to school with that money. And they would have to pay, that's more than 10% of the loan in extra interest, not in interest, in extra interest.
So the thing is, I don't know if they gave the name of the group that was given. There was,
I believe it's the Student Borrower Protection Center.
Yeah, and the explanation
that was doing the experiment.
Yeah, but the explanation needs to come from the potential people who are granting the loan to see what, I mean, we know what it could be and what it looks like it is. They need to go ahead and give us that explanation. That's the thing, because people like say, well, let's wait and see it. You never know what this was not. Hey, it's a scientific experiment where you have variables that are all the same except for one difference. So we already know what the difference is, and we see the difference in the result. And this happens across the board with folks in this country. I mean, not even just black folks, Latinos, anyone that they can see. We've seen this when it began with names. If you name your child Stacy or Jessica instead of traditionally what you would think would be an African American sounding name, then opportunities come from school, housing loans, jobs. And I didn't think it would go as far as school loans, because how can they explain it? Again, we need to see explanation.
Well, so far they don't have to.
Well,
we'll see if maybe they will.
If anybody actually picks up more on this and keeps their feet to the fire on it.
Yeah.
So we'll get people that complain all the time, or complain, the black folks complain about the way they're treated systemically throughout the whole country in every aspect of life. From the kind of car you drive to where the police respond to you. Like, why don't you guys just get over it? Hey, it's been this many years since the Civil Rights era. Martin Luther King fought for your rights, and look what we got now. It stays, things hold on this way. I mean, from the criminal justice system, everything, we know this happens this way, but the reason why this story's not catching is because it's so across the board that we're like, we've seen this before, who cares? Get over it. But if it happened to any other group on a large scale like this, we would not be getting over this.
See, I feel like if we've seen it before and we're seeing it again, that's more reason.
You would think, you know what, John,
because
you have a thought process.
I'm trying.
No one's trying to fix it, not no one, but the levers of power are not trying to fix this problem because it doesn't benefit them.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit about other things that they found. So the group also found that you'd pay more if you went to New Mexico State University in Las Cruces, which has a high percentage of Hispanic students. Randomly, you'd pay more for going there. Like, randomly.
Again,
maybe it was the name. The name's long. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know what else it could be. I can't figure it out. And so, look, I want to read a little bit of the conclusion from the report summarizing this information. So this is the Education Redlining Report, and one of their conclusions they say is, communities of color have historically been locked out of mainstream credit markets. But while companies tout the use of education-based criteria in underwriting as a means to broaden credit access for marginalized consumers, the use of such factors may actually undermine equitable access to credit. Indeed, by creating situations where protected classes of consumers are offered less favorable credit terms, the use of education data in credit underwriting decisions can reinforce systemic barriers to economic opportunity. So the sort of involvement in financing for college and the fact that they have access to that information in the first place is hypothetically supposed to help to fix the system, but it is itself being used to create new avenues for discrimination.
Is how it works. Okay, remember just at the State of the Union, Trump was speaking about how he's done so many things for black folks, unemployment. Hey, here's this one black girl in the audience, I'm gonna give her this scholarship, cool. That is the remedy that many of our politicians approach with this. Like, hey, let's go ahead and let's give this nominal gift to someone and say that we're helping black folks across the board, because that's apparently how it's supposed to work. So if you actually wanted to prove to a certain segment of voters that you care and you think you should have an equal balance of power in our country, you would attack something like this. This is when you actually mean it. During the New Hampshire primary, even with the Democrats, they were fighting over Joe Biden, and someone else were fighting over who has the African American vote. While they're talking about how many black folks like them, they're not talking about policies that are put in place to keep black folks down and how they want to attack those things to make sure that all people have the same opportunities in this country. If you want to help people, do things instead of say, hey, they like me. You know why? Because I always go to South Carolina. What does that mean? Why does that have anything to do with them liking you and them having given a reason to vote for you? Give me some policies and find out things that are actually destroying the lives of many people in the country and try to change those.
Yeah, and I wish that we lived in a world where, like, let's say we were having a debate on, like, like a sort of small issue, like is there racism in America? And like then we discover science, and we're like, we can look into it and we can see if there's discrimination. And then we were to show the evidence of it, and then that was to change people's minds. That would be an amazing world to live in, but we don't. And so, let's cut now to a Tommy Lauren thing about how you should something bootstraps. But like most of the people, so this is a hypothetical, but many people have gotten these loans to go to schools like that. They will have paid more. They won't even know that they paid more. But the price of a used car has been siphoned out of their bank account, possibly influencing life decisions, where they might move to, if they start a business or not. And this is one block of one show.
If you think they're doing it with rates on student loans, what else do you think they're doing it on? And if it's,
no, not you, I know what you're gonna say. It's not cars, it's not houses, it's not any of that. It can't be.
There's no way, right? It's not like communities have been shaped around something like this in our recent past. So please stop bringing up 1960 and 1965, because just with the financial crash, with the housing market happened before, what was happening? What was Wells Fargo apologizing for? Am I right? I don't want to smear Wells Fargo if it was Bank of America. Probably all of them.
Yeah, they deserve it.
So when you shift things and move people out of their communities because of things like this, because financial mobility and stability is something that shapes a lot of people's lives. And upward mobility that you can pass on to your children is a thing. So when your kids don't have anything to go to catapult themselves in their life off of, this cycle of a lower economic class continues. And if you think people who control money don't know that, you're crazy. Yeah. You think they don't know that? You think they just go through life hoarding money and don't know how money works and how things like interest rates and loans actually change people's lives? If you think they don't know that, they're not in the position they got there by just luck.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna go to another break. Lots more. Stick around. So we were on the brink of possible war with Iran, and thankfully, at least for now, it seems like the brakes have possibly been pumped. But every day we move closer to the election, I worry more about Donald Trump trying to raise that as a possibility or a reality once again. Now, thankfully, the House, they had a vote on legislation to try to, constrain a bit Donald Trump's ability to engage in totally optional warfare or military action against Iran. But what happens after this, and where will the Senate come out on this? Joining us now to help break it down, joining the show once again, I should say, Hassan El-Tayyab, legislative representative for Middle East Policy at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. Thank you for joining us, as always.
Thanks, John, so much. Really appreciate it.
Glad to have you here. So as I alluded to, you did have the House bill around this issue. The Senate is going to be taking it up, although it's not technically the same bill, correct?
Yeah, so Representative Alyssa Slotkin, she introduced a war powers resolution on the House side. And there were some, procedural mechanisms that allowed, I shouldn't say allowed, but didn't force the Republicans in the Senate to take it up. But luckily, we have Senator Tim Kaine's version, which is going to get a vote tomorrow. So that's the bill number on that one is SJ Res 68. It's probably going to be voted on around noon.
And so hypothetically, if that were to pass, which is not a foregone conclusion with the Senate, it would then need to be reconciled with the House.
Yeah, so it has to pass with a simple majority, just 51 votes on the Senate side. And then it would have to go to the House to get passed, which we think is likely. And then it would go to the president for signature or veto, most likely heading back to the Senate for a veto override vote. I will say that we are cautiously optimistic that we have the votes to pass it the first go-round in the Senate. It's looking like we've got 5 of the 4 Republicans we need to pass this bill. Senator Paul, Senator Lee, Senator Collins, Senator Young have all said they want to support. And Senator Moran just yesterday, thanks to a lot of advocacy on the ground and in DC, has just come out to say that he'll support as well.
So I find that interesting because I know that in the 2020 military budget, there had been a provision intended to accomplish something like this regulation of stopping him from starting a war with Iran that was stripped out. Why do you believe that this might be different in some way?
I mean, that's a really good question. The NDAA, there's a lot, of other considerations there. There's obviously the, funding the military. There's all of these individual programs. I mean, it's like a $750 billion spending package. So, the question of Iran kind of got pushed to the wayside in support of this, ginormous Pentagon spending bill. In this, as a standalone bill, I think we fare a little bit better on this question because it's really not about anything else but Congress reasserting its war authority, preventing an unauthorized war with Iran, and trying to de-escalate the situation between the U.S. and Iran, which, as you mentioned at the start of the show, is really tense, and we're very worried that things could get out of hand very quickly if we don't get Congress to step in and try to restrain the president from making a really bad choice.
So you've been on the show now 4, 5, 6 times, and we're always talking about, hey, let's not kill as many Yemenis as possible. Let's stay out of war with Iran. So we're still hoping for that. We're living on that dream. So from your point of view, if the Kane version or even some version of it that's been reconciled with the House bill is actually passed, there is the possibility that Trump would veto it. But if it passes, let's say if it goes all the way through, how much does that do to reassure you that we might be out of the danger zone when it comes to military conflict with Iran?
Yeah, so there's a lot there. If we were able to pass this, enact it into law, which is a real possibility, it basically would prevent the Pentagon from, launching strikes and the president from launching strikes against Iran until Congress came up with a declaration of war or a specific authorization to go after Iran. So I think that's really critical. Even if it gets vetoed, though, I think it still has a lot of weight and a lot of power and can change the geopolitics a bit. I mean, right now, Iran is worried. They're afraid that they're going to be attacked. And that could potentially risk, them making a miscalculation and, doing even a preemptive strike. So if they see that the Congress and the American people are at least united in a bipartisan way to try to restrain the administration from doing further strikes, that ratchets down the tensions all across the board and really reduces the risk of a miscalculation by either party. And so I think that's the right message to send to the Trump administration that no, Congress has a backbone, and they're not going to, stand aside and let their war powers be taken away from them. It's the right message to send to Iran to de-escalate. It's also the right message to send to Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, and the entire international community, in my opinion.
Yeah, I certainly agree. So one last quick question. So I believe you said you had 4 of the 5 necessary votes. Who do you think might be that final vote that might go on the right side?
Well, yeah, sorry, maybe I misspoke. We only need 4 Republicans to vote with all the Democrats, but I believe we're going to get even more than the margin that we need to just pass it, including, having Senator Moran. Senator Murkowski is actually considering voting for it as well. So I just think that's, again, when we can show that Republicans and Democrats can come together to reassert war authority, I think, our country and the military are winning. So.
Okay. Hassan, as always, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be keeping an eye on it, and maybe once we see where it's going to go, how Donald Trump weighs in, maybe we can talk about it a little bit more at that point.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. Really appreciate. And I just wanted to say one last thing is that folks can call their senators today and make sure that they vote the right way on Senator Kane's Iran War Powers resolution. I think we have till tomorrow, so it's not a done deal. That's
a great idea. Hassan El-Tayyab, thank you as always.
Thanks.
Okay, and we are actually going to talk a bit more about Senator Collins, one of the names that popped up in that conversation, after this. Probably the second most important goal for Democrats in this year is taking control of the Senate. But the path to that control goes through Republicans. And one Republican that has been identified as a potential weak link up for re-election is Susan Collins, who has generated quite a bit of discussion on this show over the past couple of years. And we're gonna break down what the situation with Susan Collins is, how things is shaping up. And joining us to do that is Kate Joseph, host of Concerning Collins, a podcast by the Mainers for Accountable Leadership. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you as well. So before we get too into Senator Collins, tell me a little bit about Concerning Collins, the podcast.
All right, so it's a new podcast we're launching today with our first 4 episodes. And you can find us at Demcast and all the other usual places, and at concerningcollins.com. We are taking a look at the Maine Senate race, giving you the local report on it. But we're also keeping a laser focus on Susan Collins and doing everything we can to hold her accountable to voters, because she isn't.
So the group that put this together has a number of former Collins supporters amongst it. I'm curious, when they sort of describe the process of going from someone who supported Senator Collins to someone who no longer does, and is in fact organizing potentially against her, what are some of the reasons that are listed?
Well, Mainers for Accountable Leadership actually has a list of 4 principles that they look for in an accountable leader. And one is that they're principled, and one is that they are transparent. They say one thing and do that same thing. They don't pretend to be something that they're not. They're accessible to voters, and they lead. So Susan Collins fails every single metric that I just listed. And what happens is people who started out supporting her, or perhaps maybe like me, didn't support her but respected her because she was our senator and did a reasonable job, even if I disagreed with a lot of the things she did. We get tired of being disrespected by her. So, for example, she tortures us. She makes us beg her to vote the right way. She refuses to announce a decision. We have to take time out of our schedules to call and show up and protest and write letters. And she pretends that she's thinking about it when in fact we know she's not really thinking about it and is going to do whatever Mitch McConnell tells her. And after a while, that just wears you down. And so people who have been sort of floating along thinking she's a moderate because that's what she calls herself and that's what the papers call her, begin to see her behavior is anything but moderate. Mm-hmm. She's not a centrist, she's not bipartisan, she's not independent, and she's not principled. She's very calculating.
So look, let's talk about potentially a case study in this. A very recent one, actually. It was that she was held up as possibly one of the Republicans, because she's so moderate and so reasonable and independent, that she might vote to remove Donald Trump from office. Right. Now, clearly she didn't do that. She says we don't need to because he will have learned his lesson from the experience. What do you think about the stated reasons for why she voted the way she did? The fact that she sort of dragged it out, making it seem as if she might vote to remove him. What did you make of all that?
Well, it was an exact replication of what she did during the Kavanaugh hearings, where she dragged it out. And we all knew how she'd vote. And she came up with a sort of paper-thin excuse to cover her actual vote. And in this case, she's a laughingstock right now, because the paper-thin reason she came up with is that Donald Trump learned his lesson. And, I guess it's been 8 days since the vote, and he's already taking out retribution on people who voted against him, and firing people, and interfering in the Justice Department, and digging up dirt on the Bidens. They've set up a special commission at the Justice Department to do that. And so her stated reason for voting that way was just ridiculous. And furthermore, she said she wanted a fair trial, and she voted 10 times to exclude testimony and witnesses from the actual trial. And when it was time to really vote, it was too late.
Yeah. Kate, it's Jayar. I wonder what degree you can actually answer this, I guess, fully, but we're coming from our point of view of being, progressives, liberals, and her calls to be moderate and a maverick and all these things that we've seen is mostly false. Do you see a lot of Republicans in the state that possibly support her or like what she's doing because it seems that she comes off as a moderate when in fact she most of the time isn't? Are they happy with her, or are we only hearing about how Democrats are unhappy with her fake moderate?
I get the sense that she's not wildly popular among Republicans either. I think she's done well with sort of the moderate middle, and she has, since the Trump era, she's tried to walk this line of keeping the Trump people happy and not upsetting all of us in the middle and on the left. And she is just not doing well with that at all. When she made her one tiny little vote in favor of admitting evidence during the trial, I think she started getting death threats right away on that, and from that side. And now she's getting trouble from the other side.
So this might play into that. So I'm curious, I want your perspective both as someone who, you have a lot of critical analysis of Susan Collins, but also someone who knows the people and the politics of the state. So the common refrain for months now has been, she will be more reasonable because she needs to prove that she is independent and moderate, and that can potentially win her reelection. So all these electoral concerns. I have sort of believed that the fervor of the Trump supporters in any sort of disloyalty is immediately attacked, that there might be an electoral consequence potentially to turning off Maine Republicans by not seeming sufficiently deferential to Donald Trump. But I don't know a lot of Maine Republicans, so I'm curious, which is the path that's safer for her in this election?
I personally don't see a safe path for her. I think we still have New England Republicans up here. We still have people that believe in fiscal responsibility as they define it, and they believe in social moderation or leaving people alone in their lives. But those people are beginning to leave the party and going independent. We have a large tradition of independence up here. We've had a number of independent senators like Angus King. We've had independent governors, and the Trump component up here is real. I don't know how big it is, but it is real, and they are absolutely fervent, and they don't tolerate any deviation from their dear leader. So
the podcast is Concerning Collins. Kate Josephs, thank you so much for joining us. Maybe we can check in a little bit further into her reelection bid.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you. Everybody home, one more break, and we'll be right back after this. So how is the economy doing? Well, it turns out for Donald Trump, it very much depends on who we're talking about, because he'll say things like best USA economy in history, which seems pretty unambiguous. Market up big today on very good economic news. Jobs, jobs, jobs. The market, no, he likes that. While the world is not doing well economically, our country is doing better, perhaps, than it has ever done before. Jobs, jobs, jobs. So better than ever before, super strong, awesome, full speed ahead, we're doing great. Wait, I'm hearing that federal workers want like a tiny little raise, like a 1 or 2% raise. Well, Donald Trump justified a move to cap federal worker raises at 1% by claiming, quote, national emergency or serious economic conditions. A raise over 1%, he said, would be inappropriate. The raise needs to be limited to, quote, maintain efforts to put our nation on a fiscally sustainable course. So if federal workers were to get 1.5%, that would stop us from getting onto a fiscally sustainable course, which we are presumably not on. Jobs, jobs, jobs. Wait, I thought best economy ever, best economy in the world. 1.5, no, it'll ruin us.
It's jobs, jobs, jobs mean McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's. That's what it is. And until people
Walmart, greeters.
Yeah, unless people start asking, hey, jobs, 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 best economy ever. What are those wages? We're not gonna get those answers because it's gonna become political campaign fodder against him.
Yeah, no, and look, we're gonna be doing a lot of analysis over the next bit about what he really thinks about jobs, what he really thinks about wages. He's been very clear for Donald Trump on this. And he's interested in the economy when it comes to the stock market. When it comes to the money that you actually make, he will literally step in to bar it from going up. Okay, thank you as always. Great to have you on. Jayar Wednesdays, very exciting. I'm gonna be on the main show later on today, so you definitely want to tune in. Should be a lot of fun. And if not, see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.